Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Marty Braden and I have a very special guest with me today. This is Chief David Midegah of the Standing Deer family. I guess it's almost evening now, David. Good to see you. Appreciate you coming on with me.
Ani, it's good to see you too. Yeah, I'm over here in Europe right now,
Mhm.
and it's almost 2 a.m. But
David is called the kind man with Headman and the Headman in, I say this right, if you don't, you can correct me, Adik Doodem Caribou Clan, by appointment of Matrilineal, clan mother Patricia Brunelle-Barker-Lafountain. Additionally, David carries a council firestone from the Niswi-Mishkodewinan, or Three Fires peoples, obtained at the Garden River Ojibwe Nation. That's a mouthful, but you said it so beautifully, but that's the first time for me saying that, David. Just as a side note, the caribou is a large gregarious deer of the tundra that usually has palmate antlers, the women and the men, the male and female, and both the male and female reindeer. David says his tribe dates back to Proto-Algonquian and Micmac, which is the indigenous language of northeastern Canada. The Ojibwe are from east of the Great Lakes area and are the standing reindeer family. David told me that he was appointed headman in a ceremony with his grandfathers, who were chiefs going back for generations, many generations. So his ancestors have lived on this continent for a very long time. David's family comes from two different cultures. The Standing Deer family, which is one of the 6 original clans of the Ojibwe people, and from the Esel Smith, which is, I think, a brother to, or the father of Joseph Smith Sr. family, who was the grandfather of Joseph Smith Jr. John Taylor is also descendant grandfather of Chief Midegah. A few years ago, David had a life event that led him to focus on his Ojibwe heritage, although he wants us to know that he's still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So David, welcome to my channel. I want you to know that it's an honor and a privilege to have you as my special guest. You're so gracious when you accepted my invitation to be on my Zoom call with me today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd say Ani, which is I see your spirit. It's the same thing every Latter-day Saint's supposed to be doing when they see each other, looking at that spirit inside. I'd say Ginu Nanana Bojo, which is the creator's working in your life. When you meet each other, you should see a reflection of the creator, of your father in heaven. And that should be what we're working for.
Yes.
And I'd say Midegah Gichi Da'an and Digo Ojibwe Mung. And it's just because I'm honoring my ancestors and to say that I am the kind man and I am a warrior and a ceremonial warrior, which a warrior is a father, a warrior is a husband, a protector of a community. That's a real warrior. And I'm from the Ojibwe peoples. I was named in a ceremony. I'd say Adik Doodem. My clan is the Standing Firm Caribou or Reindeer Clan. A Standing Firm was an addition that came in the late 1700s after the Moose Doodem, which was our brother clan, was massacred. And that's another story for another day. And we decided we weren't walking the trails anymore because the European was really causing problems. So we're going to plant our hoofs and just try to see what's going on. I'd say Miniwakan and Dunjaba, my family, the majority of them are buried in a sacred lands we call spirit water, which is all of the lakes that are from Minnesota and North Dakota up into Manitoba. Is Manitoba is spirit water, and it's a sacred place for us that we were led to in our migration story, where we were led by the Creator. And but I also want to say, so are you. Every one of us were birthed from that sacred water in our mother's womb.
Yes.
And that's the first baptism you had into this life. And that's why it's important to go back to that innocent spirit that you really are inside, to shed away a lot of those scars. And that's why I do baptism a little differently than others. I'd also say my family has been here a long time, and I brought something special for you that I hadn't shared anywhere else.
Fantastic.
And it's a petrified tooth that was handed to me to remind me whenever I'm struggling or I'm facing opposition or I'm falling off cliffs, because you can't go to a higher mountain without falling off of cliffs. Yeah, some people take the gentle slope. I prefer just a free fall. So, and it reminds me of that. And it's a giant petrified tooth.
Wow.
It's a giant petrified tooth that tells me we've been here a long time, and I should remember my ancestors have a voice today through me. just as I am the ancestor grandfather of the 7 generations from now, and if right now I'm the last ember in the fire, we're going to give it breath and rebuild it.
Well, I have to say, David, that you have such an interesting identity. Do you mind me asking, and I'm sure you know all about this, who's your lineage and heritage from? Does it start with Lehi, whose lineage, as we know, was Manasseh? Or do you like to say that it's from one of the 7 family heads? Whatever. I'm curious how you would answer that.
And so we say, you know, when I went up to the after when I had to fulfill, you know, because this is important to get into this.
Okay.
There's different types of chiefs. Like in the 1930s, this is important to understand where I got this information from. I'm like you, line by line, precept by precept. Nobody knows everything. You're all on a little journey.
Yep.
But I was up at the Denata Nation up in the Northwest Territories. They're the same as the Navajo. The Americans just choose to call them Navajo instead of Denata. And they used to go north-south. And they did that because when they made the border, they didn't want them going north-south anymore. So be careful about judgmenting on those going north-south. I just want to let people know that.
Okay.
You know, just be careful. And especially when all the reserves, their nations actually straddle over that Rio Grande River. And people should be careful. But when I was up there, she said, you know, don't forget that language is family. And so we had 7 principal families in North America, 7 principal languages. You'd find 7 tribes in the Book of Mormon. Surprise, surprise. But my story for my family of the way that we became who we are begins back about 2,500 years ago. And it's when a boat became frozen within the Anishinaabe were already here in North America, the Algonquin and many other tribes. They had come over in differing migrations. The first one came after the Tower. This is the first story shared with Orthodox rabbis in New York City by Gichi, or a great teacher of the Midu, which is the most ancient of the spiritual beliefs that was given 2,500 years ago.
Yep.
And for a millennia, it was ran by the people from the Deer family. And that's where all those scrolls, when you Google birch bark scrolls and things like that, like, hey, but we had a boat that froze in the water, and for an entire moon, 30 days, they stayed on it, and I know the location, but they surrounded the little bay area off the St. Lawrence River, and they made a circle of fire. The Anishinaabe did, and then the people came off. And when they came off, it was elders, older men with 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And the boy was older, but when they came off, the head elder, he had pulled out of his bag 2 little antlers, and he put it on his head. Mm-hmm. Now, that was a symbol that he must have known about us, because the Deer family followed the Caribou family followed the caribou. They made the big trails through nature and around the world, the highways and freeways other than the rivers that people followed. And he knew well enough that he was telling the people, we need to speak to these people. And so they called the Ogima of the Adik Doodem, who came, and they met in peace, and they brought the lodge to us, which is called Midu. It's the path of kindness established by the first father. And everything is about the first mother and father. That is when people want to know the spiritual teachings. It is about the creation of the earth. It is about understanding you're a spirit and a body, and about the first mother and father. The boy went, I'm going to abridge stuff real quick, okay?
Yep.
The boy was taken by the elders through all of our communities, and he was the greatest teacher that the elders had taught him, and he taught us. And he has helped establish the lodge, and then he left with the elders. The 2 girls were given to the 2 sons of the Adik Ogima, and that's the birth of the Moose Doodem, was at that point. And then we became the only 2 of the first 7 clans, all the way till present day, that are matrilineal descent. Because of that, with each of the daughters that tied to these 2 star women of the star, called that title as well. When the Europeans were here with the Hudson Bay Company, they recorded it, that they met 3 sisters, the 3 sisters of Chief Red Bear, the 3 sisters that all their names in Assiniboine, Ojibwe, and Cree, Oji Cree, means woman of the star, and that's Machi Kwayans, Tekomi Good, Unitino Wasis, which is my grandmother's line, which is the principal line. All of these are my grandmothers through my great-grandfather and great-grandmother, because we merged the lines with also Chief Red Bear. We did things like that to keep things together. And so we come from those people. And that's who I would say that I'm Anishinaabe, Deer Clan, but I'm also from the people of the star. Now, we know that they gave us a symbol of the lodge, which we draw with making, and then listen, this is just the way it has to be.
Sure.
Which is an 8-pointed star drawn by drawing 2 sticks that are connected in all directions. And when you draw that in the lodge, you actually make two overlapping stars of David. You'd also call it the symbol of Melchizedek.
Yes.
And so then you can make your own judgments about who it is that showed up, 10 times 7 generations before the European arrived. And we count a generation as 30 years because it's when you create the next generation. And we would use natural law just so people can do some math themselves.
Yeah.
We use natural law, and the way the natural law is not the laws we do now to give kids more time to be kids. Mm-hmm. But natural law says when you hit your mid-teens that you become capable of producing offspring. Yeah. And it's called puberty. Yeah. And for us, we knew that meant that you were separated from your parents because you had the ability to create life. Yeah. And so usually that would happen to an adult when they're 30, meaning that 30 matched the moon calendar. We said there's some synchronicity here. Mm-hmm. And so that was a generation. And so if you did 70 times 30, that's 2,100 years before the Europeans skirted the coast in 1502, and you get 600 BC. Now, the rabbis in their proclamation that worked with us for 2 years, they felt that so confident in that after spending time with us and getting to know us. This is the Shabbat, Orthodox, Hasidic, the most hardcore to the T, that they actually had it typed into the proclamation they signed, where they stated that our teachings came to us 2,500 years ago.
Interesting.
So we know who we are, and I know that I come from that sacred bloodline, and I call them brothers. So I would say, yeah
that's very good. Well, I have to say that it's so intriguing to me that what you just shared and what I've watched in all these other videos. I'm anxious to learn more of the ways in which yours and my worldview have real distinct ties. Obviously, one of the major ties is that we're both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I know you've mentioned that we're the same people, but it's just nice as we go along, we'll see ties of beliefs and experience that really we're not that different from each other.
Go into the curtain. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Like, go into the curtain and you got to present a name. These are things to talk about and consider and reflect on.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now, just a side note, I recently made a new friend who just moved to Utah from Australia. He converted to the LDS Church after searching for a church whose foundation is made up of apostles and prophets. And after 47 years as an evangelical and searching in that community, he finally met 2 sister missionaries who taught him the gospel, and he was baptized 15 months ago. Now, I mentioned to you, David, because his name is David also. It's David Alexander. The other reason I bring him up is because he did a video sharing his life story as a little child all the way up to today, including his conversion. Now, it's incredible, but it's an incredible faith-promoting story. But I have to tell you, David, that I searched far and wide and spent some hour or so trying to find a video where it was just you sharing your full story from start to finish, and I couldn't find one. So I sincerely hope that you'll consider my request to do one just like that. I think if you and you alone were on the video and you were just sharing your heart from when you were tiny all the way, I mean, you were a kid, just so many stories that I've heard little bits and pieces, but as you share that from start to finish, I think it would go viral, quite frankly. And I know I'd love to watch it, and I'm just totally positive, I'm sure there's many thousands of people who would enjoy it, both members and non-members alike, because it is a very interesting story that you've had.
We can talk about it right now.
Pardon me?
We can talk about it right now. One of the things that I always want to make sure is that people understand that we know the importance of reflecting what we know is true, but we never want to become the attention of truth. Yeah. And so we try to look at the moon and say, we are in the coolest classroom you could ever imagine. Go sit in the woods for 4 hours, 5 hours, and just don't move. And you're gonna reflect on things. Yeah. Our Heavenly Father is a master programmer. He is, if you talk about science, he is the greatest scientist. And so, so we look at the moon and say, it reflects the sun and everything reacts to the sun. This is symbolic. So as I talk about it and share, just please, there are some strange things that I'm sharing. They're just a matter of my life, but they're not about bringing any attention to me as anything more than someone speaking what my ancestors spoke and what I have been taught to speak from other people. This is really important because I have strange things that have happened, strange circumstances that people would experience once in their life, and they'd go, well, I hope that never happens again.
Yeah.
And yet I made it through because there's a best friend that we can have in our life called the comforting spirit. And sometimes you clearly and vividly know he's there.
Yes. Yes. Well, after listening to you speak for just a minute or so, like I said on that first video, my ears perked up. And after watching a lot of videos, I just have to say that I learned that you have a quest on that you're on that you want to share, and it begins with really if I consensus down, it's that you want to proclaim to all of us that it's time for us to wake up, and you're just here to share some incredible things. And so I won't steal your thunder, but I do feel that I need to set the table a little bit before I give you over to the mic fully, and you'll take off. And as you know, you do take off, and it's just
Well,
fun, and it's exciting.
let's do it different. Let's do a specific
Okay.
question,
Okay.
because when I say wake up, I mean, I need to redirect you back to the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do that. For you viewers out there, I have two links down in the video description below where David talks a little bit about his story and himself, and so you can go there to get some of the holes filled in here. And there's also a third video that I'll put down there, and that I did put down there, is the Navajo historian Wally Brown talks about the Navajo ceremonies and practices of the law. It was very interesting to me, kind of giving me a little sense of what David's going to talk to us. Now, my first question for you is about the Book of Mormon, David, and more particularly about the migration models. Now, don't get nervous here. We know about the Jaredites that migrated to the Americas about 100 years ago after the flood. It was back at the time of the Tower of Babel. We also know about two additional migrations from the time just before Jerusalem was destroyed and its people were taken captive, which I'm speaking, of course, of Lehi and his family, as well as Mulek, the son of Zedekiah, King Zedekiah. There are, of course, other migrations too, so we know that there were peoples here when Lehi and his family landed here. My question for you to start this off is about the here. Before now, I have held off stating to my viewers, I've held off stating what I think regarding the two theories or models, the Mesoamerican model or the Heartland model, but I think I want to go ahead and tell you, and my viewers are going to hear it for the first time, the model that I have most confidence in, and then you can share your thoughts on it, and that's going to be great. My view right now, David, after lengthy study, is that most of these ancient peoples, including Lehi's descendants, traveled on a network of highways that have been covered up or whatever, but back and forth from the northern and southern continents. And so in my mind, it's both models. It's both models. It's not one or the other. It's just how I coming at it. What do you think?
It's absolutely right. Before they goofed up the Mississippi River, it was like the Red Sea. We could travel from what we call Kaposia, Minnesota, which was the beginning of the trade route that my family managed up to Hudson Bay, that we could travel from there down to the Yucatan faster than you could drive a car from Paris to Madrid.
See, that statement
so people need to understand, and you can go Google the currents. We could go down the Mississippi River and follow the current to the Yucatan faster than you could drive in your car today from Paris, France to Madrid. So we were one people integrated. And, if I came along in 500 years and I saw that some of the people in North America built houses with wood, and some of them built with stone, and some of them built with glass, and some of them built with steel. And I said, oh, these are four different peoples. It's nonsense. We were one people. And what combined us, we weren't initially, we were different peoples that were coming over and rediscovering it, right? For various reasons, 7 families, and then learning to live with each other, all doing things just a little bit different. Right. But we got to remember back when the tower fell, right? That's the first story shared. We tried to touch the creator too soon. What's it say in the Torah? It says that we were dispersed to 70 locations, meaning those locations were predefined by the creator, by our Father in heaven. Okay. Yeah. And so when Lehi did show up, there were people here, multiple different ways to go to those 70 places, and they're there. But it was the great peacemaker that unified us. And we lived in one way, doing it the path of the heart. He said, to get to heaven, it's right there. And to get to him, you have to sacrifice your heart with every breath. You have to give your heart every moment. Now we ask the question, okay, this is taught in our lodge, teaching lodge. We ask the question, what do you mean? How are we going to do that? Because we're not very nice to each other.
That's right.
And he said, well, thinking of his own mother, reflecting on his own mother. He said, well, where was your heart formed? In your mother's womb. What's your first experience when the veil is lifted over your eyes and you're presented before your creator and he replays your life to you? What's your very first experience we all equally share? It's the first sound and the first feeling, which was your mother's heart. And then what was next? Her heart was inside you too. We got to live that way. Well, what does that mean? What's a mother do when the worst thing her child could ever do is commit murder? What's the mother do? Stands by his side with unconditional love.
Yep.
That's the message to the saints.
Yep.
If you're not a judge, if it hasn't been given to you, the only thing you can do is stand with unconditional love. So this is what happened. We were one people traveling back and forth, and then we had a strange thing happen. It's called time passed. And one of those groups that the great peacemaker visited before he left were on the islands in what you would call the Caribbean. And they took it a little literally. And they were called, you would call them Azteca.
Do you think? I mean, goodness.
Now I speak with the Azteca grandmother. They know, everybody knows they went a little, and this is when you go letter of the law and you forget the spirit of it. The spirit says, no, I'm talking about your thoughts, your words, and your actions with each other and all the other Ojibwe around you. The spirit that's in everything around you. There's nothing around you that is not on loan from the creating source.
In the breath.
Sustained moment to moment. How precious is it? That's a lot of atoms. And if you split one, it ended World War II. These are things to reflect on. And yet they're all around you. And they came in from the islands after a period of time had passed. And we would call that 7 generations. So it's probably about 210 years after he left. And when do we say the great peacemaker came? Just real quick for those that love calculators. We say that he came 7 times 7 generations before he came 7 times 7 generations before the European arrived. So 1502. So do the math, so do them 49 times 3. So it was about the 30s and 40 AD.
Yes.
Okay, it was about that time. So these people came in and they started, and the Mayans were there, same people, same family, just a different branch. And they said, we have a better way, and they outnumbered them 10-1. They still do. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's 10-1 compared to us north. And they came in and they took it literal. And the very places that we used to go and sing praises and do things in a kind way, they said, hey, brother, you got to sacrifice your heart to be with your creator. And they started tearing them out of chests. And if you made a mistake, you got to sacrifice your heart for forgiveness, forgetting that we're talking about an action and not the physical removal. And that spread north, and it started quite the conflict that occurred in the central region of North America. We built fortifications. You find these fortifications. They've tore a lot of them down until we had a balancing, which was they stay here and we stay here. And that's why when the Europeans found us, the way we balanced it and made sure that would never happen is that we placed the grandmothers in charge of everything. The grandmothers were the only ones that could pick the leaders, who were priests. The grandmothers were the only ones that could think for the generations, and they were the ones running everything. And it was a reaction to that perversion. So it's the whole thing. You're absolutely correct.
Well, we hear of the Algonquin, the Adina, the Hopewell, the Mississippians, etc. But my understanding is that there are basically, as you said, 7 families with one family head. I don't know if that is who you say is the leader.
Now
go ahead.
They say Adina and Hopewell because that's the name of the place where they found it.
Correct.
The reality is they were and we could go and dig under cities and find Boston 100 years ago and then try to say it's different than the Boston today. It's nonsense.
Okay.
There were 3 brothers, okay, who had crossed, and when the great peacemaker came, people don't realize and connect some dots here. The Algonquin are many people. You have the Algonquin, which means that they're a group in the Northeast, but it's just the language, right? It's an Algaic language.
Okay.
But you have the Algonquin, you have the Mississauga, you have the Nipissing, you have the Ottawa, Potawatomi, you have the Ojibwe, you have the Oji-Cree, and you have the Saulteaux. All the same people. The name determines your location, is based off your location or your responsibility. Okay. Now, the Council of Three Fires, the Three Fires people. Now, you say there's all these people, but why do they call themselves the Three Fires people? Well, because there are three brothers. There was an older brother, a middle brother, and a younger brother. And after the peacemaker came, they headed west, and they took their families over into the Great Lake region. Again, going back where they already were before.
And you call that the heartland, which is home.
Yeah, it's the heartland. And so here's what they took. They wanted to make sure that what they had been given by the peacemaker, there's three of them, okay, that it would be sustained for future generations. So the elder brother, who is Ojibwe, says, I'm going to, which means I'm recording a vision. You're Ojibwe. You're recording a vision with the Creator.
Right.
That they said, we'll be the keepers of the faith. And we'll remind all of the people to remember the faith and the message that was given to us, the spirituality. They took Lake Superior. Okay. And that was their responsibility to remind all the people of what the Grace Peacemaker had taught and to remember the first mother and father. Like, this is the path of kindness. We call it the path of the heart. The middle brother, he stayed over in Michigan, and he said, well, where I'm at is very big and it touches all the water. So I'll manage the communication and trade. And so he was an Ojibwe. They started calling himself the Ottawa, Dawa. It means I'm a trader. Okay. I'll keep the connection with trading. The younger brother, he said, well, then I'll keep the fire. That's the communication. We built mounds and we communicated for gatherings and events by putting a fire on top of those mountains. You find them all through the Mississippi region. That was communication. That was for communication. And they were the fire keepers. Okay. And these were and then the three brothers left and they went around the world, according to our story. Okay. And the three brothers came back. And there's a story about these three brothers. Okay. But the Potawatomi, well, you would call them that, but we could connect them to that because they had an extended long age, and specifically the story of the younger brother and what happened with him. But we filled with the fire keepers, the Potawatomi, filled the entire Mississippi region. They were the communication for the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. And these three families from these three brothers, because they were connected to these three brothers, were so significant. They held it together for millennia. You know, the oldest scroll that the museums have is written by Potawatomi elder Shup Shawana. It's dated to 796 AD, and the Three Fires is fully functioning, right? But we know it came, back in the 1st century by these three brothers. And so this is the thing we say, we could share these things and you know what we're talking about, and I'll pause there and we'll let you keep going. So yes, the entire region there was us. Now, there was another group that showed up. They came from the south and they moved up the coast. And the reason that people don't think about it is because they accept the different terms given today. Cherokee, Tuscarora, and the 5 nations of New York called Iroquois. They're the same people. They speak the same language, Iroquoian. They came from the south and came up until they met us at the St. Lawrence River. Okay. And then we just butted heads because they wanted to be there, but they were a late migration. They came after the Muskogean language, which you would know, the Chickasaw, Choctaw. They came after. They were already in the Southeast. They have their own story. They share it on the website. They came from across the Pacific. They hit the Yucatan on the western side, and the people there didn't like them, so they walked like a Moses migration. And when they got to the Mississippi, it was like crossing the Red Sea. And then they crossed that and went into the Southeast and called that the promised land the Creator had led them to. And then they became our first great friends. Okay. So you had the Algonquins would have been those that came after the flood. Those that came from the west and walked across into the Southeast would be who you would refer to as the ones that you would call the Lehites. And then they intermixed with us. Okay. And this was us. And then we had those that came from the south that were fleeing the crazy psychoness that was occurring in the center. And you would call those the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois that went up the west. And that's why everything they wear is so similar to the images you see in stone in Central America. They decided to say, time out. We're not dealing with this. We're going to remember the great law of peace that was given to us. And we're going to go here. Okay. And so they were like us, you know? And so, yeah, there's different stories.
That we're going to get in that a little bit, so I'm going to tighten it up a little bit for me anyway. Yeah. You're coming, you know, there's several peoples. There's the Lehigh family, there's the Mulekites, and there's others, I'm sure. There's the brother of Jared, which was way earlier back at the time of the Tower of Babel. The one that's coming from the St. Lawrence area there, is that the Mulekites? Is there something, or do you feel like
that's my family?
Okay, that's what, okay. Fantastic.
That's the ones that were they were a very small group of, they were children and elders. This was not a large migration of people. Okay. This was a small family that was integrated with, because for somehow they knew the proper token to get the attention of the trade, those running the routes, which means we know that we were traveling over there and they were probably communicating with us.
Okay, so that's really helpful for me. That's the ones that is its own exodus of a small people, but they
very small.
Okay, and then
and they brought the lodge. They brought the Midew Lodge.
Okay, and then it says that the Lehites maybe came down by Florida area still from the Atlantic down there, but south, and worked their way up at different times, worked it up towards the Great Lakes.
The ones that were there were the Muskogean. Now, remember, the only ones that are there on the East Coast, the only language family is you have the Algonquin, Anishinaabe.
Right, okay.
Then you have a hybrid strange Doodem due to these travelers. That you went from a patrilineal society to this clan is now matrilineal, and they're running all these lodges, these new teaching lodges that were brought to us. Right. And they got this star, and we changed the whole thing. We changed the game. And then you had the Muskogans came in. They came in from the Pacific. This is their story. People can go Google this. Chief Phil Lane talks about it all the time. They came in from the Pacific, hit the Yucatan on the west side, and then they traveled across and then came up through the Texas area now, and they walked across the Mississippi, which was like literally their telling of it was like trying to cross the Red Sea. And then they settled in the southeast, and then they integrated and communicated and became close friends, very close friends with the Three Fires people, the people that were at the Great Lakes. They became they weren't called that then. We weren't called that then, but the people that were living there, and then they integrated almost into one people.
Yeah, is that, I'm just trying to follow here. Up north, the Canada area, your people up there by the Great Lakes coming into the St. Lawrence, did they kind of be part of the people who, that gentleman that came down and he was the last one? There was a major destruction of people up north, and he came and they found the people in Zarahemla and the Mosiah and the people came up. It's hard to keep a lot of these folks straight, but I think some of the story overlapping to what you're saying there, it just affirms so much of what the different peoples were and when they came into the situation. I'm sure there's somebody that came in from the west side, the Atlantic over there. I don't know. I would love to have that kind of be charted down in a little column and say, okay, here's kind of what, and the Book of Mormon kind of lay to that. It's not going to be specific because we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
If people focused on the language and remembered the language is the family.
Yes.
And they focus on that, then they can go to many communities of the same language and they can get the story that exists today.
Yeah.
And then step back and you see the story, you know, like the Denetah. The Denetah were always there. You know, they were the ones that, you know, these are the ones that go from north to south, right? They were going north to south and around. They took the path to get there around the Arctic. They're the ones that were traveling the world the fastest because they just went straight around the top of all the continents. Okay, they're found in Russia, northern Europe. They're found in the Arctic Circle region, but they also were traveling south down to what you would call Mexico, And that was for spiritual reasons. They would go down there and then go back north, go down there and go back north. You also have those that came in from the islands that populated the western coast. And their migration came from Asia. You can take their DNA test and they got Asia on them. And why is that? Because they came across the islands, they came along the coastlines. None of them tried to war with each other. They were just trying to be a family.
Yep.
But that's the approach you have to take. The problem is that when you have a colonial governments over a couple hundred years break people into 600 communities, and then they treat each individual community as its own distinct individual people. Set that aside. Language is family. And if you want to understand the western side versus the eastern side got there by a migration that came, a large migration that came after the tower fell. We would call these the Algic peoples. They're the first ones back that, and the reason they knew to go there is because they remembered that's where they were before the flood.
Yeah.
They went right back to where they were before the flood, back to where their stories that they had told them to go. But that's what they did. And they went back to the very same spot.
And that's this continent, the northern continent, by the way.
That's right. The Muskogean language showed up. And the Muskogean language would have been the Chickasaw, Choctaw, the 5 families down there that were actually like 5 brothers. There are a group of 5 that migrated from across the Pacific. And they walked through they arrived in the Yucatan, and then they migrated up across and they knew they couldn't stay there because there were people there too. And they migrated up across into the southeast. Then we know the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois showed up, and they came up from the south along the east coast. And this is why the Cherokee and the Tuscarora and the 5 nations of New York, they're the same family. They speak the same language. And until the Americans came, they were the same people. So the British.
Yeah.
And so we know that. The other side was just a ton of intermixing. People in islands, people that came in and went to islands, because people needed space and spread it out. So the Mayans that went to the islands over time, they changed, but even the Mayan story, when you ask them, or the Aztecs, where they come from, they have their own story about coming there as well.
I do have a question for you, right at this mix of everything coming together. What we do that simplifies it for me is at some point, at those dates that you talked about 34 to 40 AD, Christ came, and then 3 years later, he died and was crucified, and he rose again, and then he appeared to America at the land bountiful. But my question is, did all the people span from that, or did you think he did a visitation up there, which was probably in North America, but he did one down in South America?
We know.
How many times do you think he visited different groups, other sheep, other than just?
I'll tell you what happened. So we know that he came 7 times 7 generations before the European came along the coast. The European came along, we had to keep track of, we had to know 7 generations before us.
16th century, 6.
So we're in 1502, and if you go, 49 times 30, you got, just pull up a calculator here, and it'll give you a roundabout. Let's go 49, 7 times 7, that's 7 generations times 7, 49 times 30. And we got 1470 years. So somewhere in 30 to 40 AD, because remember, the Europeans skirted the coast in 1502 to 1504.
Correct.
And when we teach our people, we say 7 generations. Well, 7 of those before is when the great peacemaker came.
Okay. And so that's fun. But we hear, the reason why I'm asking the question, David, is that I know
he went to everybody.
Down that Southern America, Central America, there's a lot of carvings in the stone that shows the descending God holding his hand, which is a cup, which I think is kind of like the bitter cup. Christ came, he descended down and took the bitter cup. Well, that's a story of Christ, but that's way down south. It's not up north, but each have their own illustrations. But did he go down there and meet with them?
They share the same. Everybody shares the same. Well, again, they even know today as they go into the Amazon that it never looked like that before. Not only that, but somehow mankind made a big garden there, and they brought black earth that's only found in North Dakota.
Okay.
So we were one people. Now, when he came, he went to all of the 7 families.
That's
he went to every single one, and he allowed them to call him in their tongue what they would call him. That when he came to the Haudenosaunee Iroquois, because they were really hard-minded, that listen, sometimes you can see a miracle and not believe it. He actually climbed to the top of the tallest tree just to show who he was. And he jumped off and allowed himself to fall and hit the earth. They record this and teach this today, and then stood up. And they were like, okay, whatever you want. Okay. He came to us and we called him the one who heals hearts. He went to each group of the 7 families and taught them before he left. And we know that he left where the Hopi are. We know that that's where he left, the ones who actually called him Manasseh, that they called him the Messiah. It's like Messiah. They have a name, but it's Messiah. And it means that's where we know he left. And he told them that that's where he would come back. He would leave where he come back. And but he went to all of them, every single one of them. He went to those that are in the islands that you would call in the Caribbean. They're the ones that took it a little literally. He went to, and what's it say in the book, Martin? He went to those in the islands. Yep. He went to those in all of the regions. And it was so significant when he went to South America that when he left, what did they do? They went out and stacked rocks in big, massive patterns and formations to try to show him that they knew he was up there looking down, that you would never see unless you were in the sky, and they would never know, except they knew it was for him. Right? They all have the exact same story of this character, this person that was in an immortal body, and he was a great teacher. And he aligned all of us, literally, chink aligned. And everybody, there was a great law of peace that was like a great tree. And the roots were stretched in all of the land. Okay. All of the land.
Yeah. The teachings are incredible that you share. I mean, the divine feminine, the 3 components of balance, the 4 rooms. There's so much. It's just incredible, David. So much.
But the Jews preach that too. You know, when I was talking to the Jews, before they pulled out a book called the Tanya, man, they don't even know what this is. It's not Tanya like the lady down the street working at the grocery store. No, it's the Tanya is their spiritual ideology. What they actually, when you take the Torah and apply it, what's going on? And they talk about that there's a masculine and a feminine in everything. But the Creator made that, the Heavenly Father made that in an image, a reflection. And if you read the Torah, the oral and written, because just like us, just like us and just like you, just like Latter-day Saints, there's that which is written. And then there's that which you have to receive oral in a teaching house. Now, granted, you go sit there now and you watch a video. It's orally taught to you. You're not given something to read with that. It's orally taught to you. Well, they did that in the Torah. They had the written portion. The Greeks got a copy of that. That's where you get your Bible. The grandfather of the Bible is the Torah. But then there's when you go into the synagogue or the temple, there's the oral portion that Moses shared orally. Sure. Well, I got a copy of that that's very special. They make one for their rebbes. And I got one of the special. When you read that, it clarifies it even more. We read the book of Genesis and we get confused because it's a book that was taken from what the Greeks gathered from the Hebrews of what was written. And in there, when you read that, it looks like it tells Genesis twice. It looks like it, and I don't understand it. People say, well, maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's, when you read the oral and written Torah together, everything is created spiritual first. Exactly. And then there's a narration that says, now we are going to transition into the physical world. And it's then told physical.
And that's been told from way back when. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I've been teaching this way forever.
We need people to go back to the grandfather book and you'll understand who you are and why you're important today. And so, we have the same thing in the lodge. We have our scrolls that will draw you to songs and then the story. And so this is, I don't know where we're going with this, but the great peacemaker taught everybody the right way to live. We're the ones that screwed it up. It only took 7 generations and we screwed it up.
Well, what's interesting, David, is that is the commonality that really shows we're all his children, and he has a plan to bring us all back. And there's the written word, and then there's this, as you say, the oral teaching that's special and sacred and not secret, but it's carried down, and we do mess it up, and many generations past, they mess it up, but it doesn't defy the fact that it's all there and it's recorded in the Book of Mormon,
Sure.
and it's recorded in so many places. But it's all going to come together. I have a sense that it's all going to come together. We're all going to hit the forward and realize that he didn't taught this to many sheep that are
That's right.
of the fold, that just the Mormons, that just the Mormon Book of Mormon. There's so many places he
Well,
went.
and we have to remember what were the key, what was going on. You had the Europeans that at the time, let's just go back to 1823.
Okay.
In that very year, the United States federal government, Andrew Jackson said, you know what, we're going to get rid of these Indians.
I'm just so sad. I
Now,
know
7 years later in
about that.
1830, right when the temple is established in Kirtland, is the exact year that the migrations, like literally the most horrific of it, began. Okay.
Wow.
Now, at the time that he received these things in that 7 years, we were in small degrees in the Middu Lodge. It stretched all the way down. We were doing those things. We were going to the veil and presenting a name. We were sitting, men and women. We were learning about the first mother and father. We were going to the purification lodge before we went in to, and confessing our sins. And depending upon how great they are, is how strong the baptism would be.
Right.
And you go into the purification lodge, and that's what it is. And you learn the power of breath. You go back to birth. And then you come out, and then you can go in the teaching lodge because you're in the right frame to receive the next level of instruction. These things existed. This was not created by Joseph Smith. He said he got it from what the Indians had. Well, we still carried it even underground in the midst of genocide, ethnic and cultural, until this day. And, now here we are in the 7th generation. If we go by natural law, which says that it's about 30 years, because in that time period, you mostly have a child that is becoming of age. And so we're in the 7th generation now. From 1823, it'd be 2023. So we're in that 7th generation right now. And that's when things flip the other way. It's generally in that period, according to our records and according to your records from the other side, which is mine too, because that's my family too.
Sure.
That generally that 6th and 7th generation has an opportunity to go one way or the other. They either follow the path of the heart, or they follow the path of literal black and white letter of the law, which has no heart, no spirit in it. And when they do that, they divide their people. Anything that brings division is not of the Creator. The Creator brings unity. Now, when you guys came across the water, Europe was like in a really bad place. They were committing genocide all across Asia, Africa, South America, Central America, and North America, in the name of Jesus, and he was not happy about that. We must assume that if he's real.
That's an understatement, David. Not happy.
So if he had made promises, and he keeps his promises.
Yes, he did. Covenants.
Okay. And he said, upon this land, this would always exist. Then he would do a marvelous work and wonder. In the very 7-year period that we would be beginning what would be a great tragedy in human history, that I'm the first generation to speak out of. That he would take the best parts of what we had and place it directly within the oppressor that was coming upon us. And then this would refine them in their hearts to be ready to stand with us when we came out of it. And what did they choose? Joseph Smith and the original pioneers chose to actively take upon themselves our practices, and then were treated just like we were treated. They had to migrate. They had to face threat of death and loss of life. They had to travel to different places, just to keep it going. And what were they doing? They were just saying, hey, we're spirits lowered. We're spirits in a body. We're supposed to live the good way. And we're supposed to go get further knowledge on how to live in the temple that we call our body. And we do that in a teaching place called the lodge. And because in the end, it matters when all of our bodies, which are like building bricks, start acting the right way. Our Father in heaven is going to dwell with us in a sacred house that will be living. Now, this is the part where I say to Latter-day Saints, have a little more kindness to my people. And remember, what did your keys come from?
Yep.
Jesus Christ gave Peter, James, and John. He also gave Moses and Elijah their authority on that other continent, on the other side of the world.
Right. But there was authority here given.
He came in a resurrected body and gave with those resurrected hands 12. Those apostles on this land, and 3 of them that were brothers. He said, you're going to make it to the end. right? And they went and formed within their culture and society a special group that would be structured so that not these things would never be forgotten. Okay, the three fires people of the three brothers, the elder, middle, and younger. We're trying to speak to you, as the Jewish would say, Anishinaabe, in Hebrew means I'm prophesying to you. We're trying to tell you something. Now, did any of those sacred 12 or those three, did they show up and give their keys? Their keys came from resurrected hands in full power. Did they give those to the oppressor? No. The people from across the water came over onto our land, and they were given the authority from there to come over here and do what we were doing. Now, why wouldn't our keys be given to you?
I do have a quick comment, Dave.
Because we're going to be together as brothers.
Yes. Didn't resurrected hands give it to Joseph Smith too?
I think he did. Hey, yeah. It was John.
John and Peter, James, and John, all four resurrected beings. And Moses and Elijah, they were resurrected beings. So resurrected beings carried that authority and brought it here. That's for sure. And I don't know the story of how apostasy may have followed after those beautiful 12 people here in this land and the three brothers, as you say. I don't know the story there, but I know those three are still here. I know they've helped your people. They're still helping your people in ways that I don't know.
The Midew Lodge has continued on. And even though it shrunk down to very, bare minimum, it never went away. Yeah. And the thing is if we take you to our lodge, you would say, you've already been to it. Just like when I was a teenager and I went through, and then I graduated boot camp on April 27, 2001, and I was taken by Branch President Victor Bibiston to the San Diego Temple, taken in, and President Clark, and they took me back. I didn't have a piece of paper. I wasn't in a suit. I was in a Marine uniform. And they gave me my Melchizedek priesthood temple recommended. I went through right there. And I was like, wow, I've been here before, right?
Okay.
I've been here before. So we need to be a little bit more kind about what was going on. What was going on? And does that mean that our priests that we call priests that we're taking something from you? No, our law says, the fourth law, which is honesty, what the Creator has given to you is not mine to take away. And what the Creator has given to me is not yours to take away. We're supposed to dwell in harmony together. And this is when we take two sticks, they like that when they read the Book of Mormon, two sticks comes, what do you think we're drawing when we're drawing our Medu star, right? What you would call the Melchizedek star. Medu means kindness. It's the name the first father named himself. He named himself. I'm kind. I give sound to all things. And this is a story we carry. No one cares to hear. We've been carrying it for thousands of years before you guys showed up here. But when we say that we're coming to you and we're doing the same things, it doesn't take anything from you. It doesn't take anything from you, just like we're not trying to take anything from you. And people say, oh, we're New Age. What are you talking about, New Age? We're recorded by the Jesuits in 1640 doing these things. What are you talking about? So there's only three things that could have happened, and we're not saying that it happened. Two of them is Joseph Smith. The Creator knew that these things were going away. That Joseph Smith went in the woods and observed. And this is the conversations we have. Okay, because as we come out, we say, what appropriation has occurred, right? We lost our families. We lost our culture. We lost our language, right? Are we losing our spirit?
We couldn't even teach it.
No. What's the spiritual? If we said the seven laws, the seven grandfather, same as the Jews are sharing, we would get, it was a criminal offense. How strange is that? But if we say, well, this young boy in 1820s, he goes into the woods. There's only three things that could have happened. Three things, if we objectively look at it from our perspective, which is he was watching a Midew Lodge. He was watching us watch what we do and share our history, which is what we do when we go there. And here's the problem with that.
Language.
He didn't know Ojibwe.
Yeah.
Nobody knew Ojibwe. Okay. So that's not there. That's not true. The second thing, he went and our elders watched him and saw him praying. I thought, man, this is a really good kid. And we have an opportunity as we have to leave to put our stuff like a seed within like the really abusive society. Well, there's a problem too. My grandfather sat in the 1824 Sweet Corn Treaty. They sat in the 1863 Old Crossing Treaty, as well as the 1850 failed treaty. They didn't know any English.
Yeah.
And we ran the lodges. They didn't know a lick of English.
That was
Joseph would have been like, blah, blah, blah. He wouldn't understand nothing.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Or he went in and it's just like he said. the great peacemaker appeared before him and said, I keep my promises. And the very best of what these people had is disappearing. Disappearing. Just like what we knew, what kept us to cling on to it. What kept us? We had visitors come after the great peacemaker left that gave us the 7 fires prophecy. They told us the 7 ages in the future. And when you know you're in that fire or period, you need to take and safeguard and hide your things. And we did that because we knew we were in that age. We were in that 5th and 6th fire. And we stepped down and we hid our things because if we didn't, it would all be lost. At the same time we did that, boom, church pops up. This is just a reality. And so that's why I tell the saints, you calm down. They're telling us we got to take our scrolls to them with keys and with the seers to translate our stuff for us. No, we already know what they mean. We know what our scrolls mean. What are you talking about? And if they affirm your Book of Mormon, then listen to what you tell other people. That's my Book of Mormon. And you tell people who have the Bible, if this adds upon the Bible, if it adds upon your testimony of Jesus, then receive it. If the oldest faith in North America says it came from the great peacemaker, and before it reaffirmed, and they say before that it came from those that showed up in boats when they're saying that the house of the Lord was destroyed, the lodge of the Creator was destroyed, right? And they're giving all you the signs and tokens the same, right? If we're bringing that to you that adds on to the validity of the Book of Mormon, then aren't we doing the same thing you're doing to everybody else?
Well, sure.
What are we
I have a comment on this. I have a comment on this. This is important, David, and you bring up some good points, and I want to share a thought on it. And I don't speak for the church. I'm just a simple member of 17 million plus, but I do have a thought, and that is, the Bible was not perfect, and yet it was considered the stick of Ephraim and came to it the stick of Joseph, and it was held together. We hold it in one because they both testified Jesus Christ. We also know there's going to be a third witness. It's been prophesied, which is the house that lost tribes are going to bring their records, and there'll be a third witness. I do say this, and this is just me, if in fact the Lord knows about you, and he had these 7 fire prophecies, and he had that 8th, that prophet came that said, you better be careful. There's going to be either a warrior or a loving brother. And you've had 2 or 3 times where it was a warrior and really destroyed a lot of things. I think he knows all that. And if there's records, it's going to fulfill the prophecies that Joseph received about more to come. Because we do believe that in the 13th article of faith, we believe all that he has revealed, all he does not reveal, and that he will yet reveal many great and important things pertaining to the kingdom of God. So if these are important and there's knowledge that can come that all of so reminds another people of the promises made, I think the way will be made. And it always starts with one person or 2 or important to have those discussions, to take it and to be revealed. Revelations happen even today, that things will happen to open those doors to where you'll finally have the peace. The church leaders and the members will have the peace that this is so exciting, but we are a little reserved because we're human, we're fallen, and we have been fooled before. People always.
Yeah, but here's the thing, not to cut you off, but
no, that's fine.
You don't have anything to prove the validity of the Book of Mormon without us. Okay, number one.
You gave the
number 2, our scrolls are older than anything that you wrote in the 1820s or 30s.
Correct.
That's number 2. Number 3, the things that we were doing it 1,000 years before you were doing it.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
And when we say stick, we don't say book.
Right.
We use the eagle staff. And if you look at the eagle staff, it's a staff that curves like a big circle on the top. And as in at the same thing you see the Pope carrying, and it's a key. Yes, we carry the same thing. It's authority, right?
Right.
When we talk, we don't talk like in that way, like the Bible and this is an observation people make, right? That the European makes. We never made that observation because we know that there's far more than the 1/100th you have. And so when we say stick, we say the full knowledge of one added with the full knowledge of the other, and that knowledge is of Jesus Christ, the great peacemaker. We don't say that a 100th is the full stick of the authority. We say all of it is of the families that he spoke to, that again, it was the European who decided to go to war and try to make it to go into hiding. So when we're coming, we're not asking, and I'm talking to you as my family member, but as a voice from my family. that we're not asking for validation. I never agreed to come to these conferences seeking for somebody to tell us that we're okay.
You already know.
And we're not asking for somebody else to publish what we have. What we're saying is that we know the age we are in because of some signs that we have seen. And so all of the lodges are gathering this year and migrating back east and bringing everything that they have together so we can visually see what was left, knowing that even in the 1850s, written in your books that Brian Nettles shared in one of his shows, that they stated that every 15 years, the elders brought out the scrolls and looked at them. And if they were damaged, they had to put them away. They kept, this has continued to this day, but they're all coming together. And they'll be meeting the very week before that we have the meeting in Wisconsin, where I'll be sharing the 4 scrolls that I have been honored to carry. But my 4 are not the full knowledge. They're a portion. My 4 specifically talk about a specific point, right? And because I didn't want to be associated with fraud, I actually shared the visual of it with Dan at Latter Day Watch and with Brian Nettles and with Wayne May, and said, we're not fake people. We're not Mark Hoffmans.
Right.
We're the tribal peoples of this land, and this is our heritage, spiritual heritage, and we will not allow European descendants to do the next genocide, which is to spiritually tell us to throw it all away.
Right.
So when you say the sticks are come together, they're not together yet. We've never claimed to have a prophet. We've never claimed to have a prophet. Just want to let you know. We do claim to have a priesthood.
Right.
Because our priesthood and authority was given to us by the great peacemaker and passed from generation to generation, from initiated Midu to Midu, who's gone through the proper channels. And we're waiting for the day when and we preach this, that the responsibility of the white man is to be prepared to sit in the circle again. Right. And we believe that the Book of Mormon and the teachings that were beyond the Book of Mormon, which is what do you do next, which is, when you go through the lodge, the temple, the further knowledge of why you're here, what's going on, that this enables you to be prepared generation by generation by generation to sit with the other races in harmony, the very ones that your ancestors, that we must accept as Europeans, were genociding maniacs, claiming to do so in the name of Jesus. You were being prepared for the end time that the Jews would call the Messianic age. They put it in the proclamation. I was shocked. They wrote, we're waiting for the 8th age of the Messianic age. I was blown away. I can't believe they even wrote that word. And so but this perspective has to be taken, not we're LDS and we're going to eliminate everybody's beliefs in the entire world.
Well, I don't think that's our heart, but I can see the message that might come across, because here's the fact though, David, just speaking for myself again, I know there's more. I know that Latter-day Saints generally can sometimes be overly proud. We got the fullness of the gospel, but how can we say the fullness doesn't mean there's no more to be coming? Why would we need prophets then if we have the fullness? We have it all in the, no, there's more to come, and there's more records to come. Therefore, we're just in the same boat that the Christian community is, that we say, just let us add to what you already have. Well, we're not complete either. We're still waiting for some to come. And I think we need to keep that in mind as Latter-day Saints. And that's why we should be so much so in prayerful and praying and hoping for this additional stuff to come. I think Elder Holland's alluded to it. I think President Nelson has. I think for the last 8-10 years, incredible things have been said. We're not noticing. And so I think this is an interesting time that you're coming out of that little shadow back there to be more vocal.
And I walked and we talked prior, but I went and I wanted to know what's the direction that the apostles and prophet are teaching. I watched all the general conferences the last 4 years. Pivotal period of time too.
Yes.
And I would remind the Latter-day Saints to go and view it, because all that keeps being write it down is Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, read the Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon, Book of Mormon. Remember your responsibilities. Why? You can't be prepared for what's next if you're not prepared with what you have. And the door right now almost closed in the last week, because all I did is said, I'm going to go and share what we teach and believe. And I'm going to share some records that will validate the ones that you have that you don't have the gold plates to validate from. Okay. And so we're going to bring, and by the way, the book that was written in 1850 by an Ojibwe Indian. Okay. That is Brian Nettles. If you go look at his site, he referenced it.
Yeah.
That's actually an Indian. He talked about how our things are written on brass plates,
Yes. Yes.
copper plates, gold plates. It's mentioned in there. So don't let anybody give you drama about gold plates. Okay. We had them too. But also birch bark because it was easier to carry them around. Okay. We had our own paper. But you know, the question is how do we feel? Okay. When until 1978 in the US and 1996 in Canada, we couldn't raise our own children.
Yes.
How do we feel? How do we feel? Now let's just put that one to number one. Number two, how do we feel when in 1701 we made an agreement that William Commanda held the belt, where there was the French and the English, the Indian and the English, and we said we dwell side by side, and then they took all of our things and we lowered into poverty, and then they blamed us because we weren't and placed us in places that can't sustain life or add anything of value to us, and then never fulfilled their treaty agreements. Over 400 never fulfilled. I got two that says my family's supposed to have a reservation. Where's it at? Right? Affirmed last August, telling District Court of Washington, D.C., going, oh, go civilly sue. Yeah, it's real. Go sue. Oh, we're going to go spend more millions of dollars for you to do what you promised to do. So you take everything from this people, don't fulfill your promise for what you took, right? And then you blame them for their poverty when they couldn't get themselves out of the poverty if they tried, because you put them somewhere where they can't sustain one generation, let alone seven. And then because of their poverty, you then step in and take their children away from 1883 to 1978, specifically in the US, in 1996 in Canada. Not only that, you ban their language, you ban their culture, their spiritual culture, okay? You separate them 80 acres from each other. You ban their potluck gathering while your churches run potlucks, and we can't have the same. Right? Then you forcibly, we can't go to a regular hospital. We have to go to an Indian hospital we don't want to go to, where they self-report themselves from 1960 to 74. They forcibly sterilized 60% of our women. And then we get told, how come there's not so many of you? Right? Right? And so we've lost our possessions. We've lost our tongue. We've lost our culture. We've lost, and then the last thing is we're the only thing clinging to that keeps us going was the prophecies given to us by our ancestors. It said, endure to the end because it'll mean something. And we stand up and say, the only thing we have to offer is what you feel in your heart makes the Indian sacred. You feel that we're closer to the creator and to creation. Somehow you know that that's true. And we present to you and say, hey, you know what? We've been traveling around the world with the Jews, trying to find those that remember the seven teachings and pull the remnants back. And you decided to let us talk. So let's just present something to you. And we get told, oh, you're a bunch of Mark Hoffmans, by those that can't even prove where the book they got came from without us. This happened.
You're talking individually a few folks, correct? Not as
I'm talking over 800 emails.
Oh, so sad, David.
Okay.
And mine wasn't one of them.
No, I know, but I wanted to just say, hey, listen.
I understand.
Calm down, because this came across very poorly, very badly. If our spiritual identity, which is all we have, we can't even have and must also be replaced, then the Creator didn't keep his promise to us.
Well, we know that's not the case. He keeps his promises. So
he keeps his promises every time.
We're going to watch how that happens, because it's going to happen on your part, on our part. We're all given promises that we know to be true.
So whether you are letter of the law, conservative hardcore, or you are liberal, move with the heart, we believe that in the end, you will align with the great peacemaker, and you will allow us in the desert we are now found within, and is not the reservations we are on, the most impoverished lands outside of Africa, not where we've ever lived. It's where we were placed as you took everything from us. And then you blame us because I'm talking a sharp tongue right now. We get blamed because you get the free education and you can become an American and a Canadian and give up. I was formed in my mother's womb from the plants and animals she consumed, from this earth within which my grandfathers and grandmothers lie. I am their prayers made flesh. I remember them. I will not let it go. So you have been prepared for this time. You have been given enough to know the right way for this time, to stand side by side with us as we seek again to enter and sit at the table of the human family, because we have something to offer too. And also we bring a great gift to you, which is your cornerstone as you profess, which I profess because I am you. Shed your sight and you will see I am you and you are me. That it's not an invisible block that's solely based on faith, that is a solid stone based on fact, that is sustained by the oldest recorded religion in the Americas, which was established by those that came in a boat from when the Great Lodge was destroyed, that brought the emblem of Melchizedek to prove to you today we never forgot, that was resustained by the great peacemaker who promised us we would endure. And here we are. And I am sent to you as an Oshkabewis, a ceremonial messenger, because I am from you. My grandmother, Martha Smith, the church does not share this, and I'll share it here for you as a sacred thing. My grandmother, Beverly Bushnell, whose mother was Hazel Ruby Millet, whose grandfather was Artemis Millet, who built the Kirtland Temple and was there when they appeared and saw them, along with my grandmother's father's grandmother, Martha Smith, who held the golden plates in the house with Hiram when they came to take them, and she herself, the first member of the church to marry an Indian named Hiram Bell Bennett, a descendant of Pocahontas, because she believed that Joseph Smith was telling the truth, and these people that were hated were equals and sacred, that she herself recorded in her journal, and the church doesn't share it, and they should, that she carried him in her hand, wrapped the cloth around him, and walked with Hiram out to the barn and lifted the wood and hid him under the floor. That she was in that Kirtland Temple when those that had the keys from across appeared physically. I can't condemn you because that's my own family. Yeah. But you must understand I will not condemn my chiefs and my matriarchs that were standing side by side when our pioneer ancestors went through a tragedy where they built a temple and watched it burn down. That's how hard-hearted the people they were standing within were, right? That watched their prophet and his brother and his other two brothers die in a very short period of time, who walked into a desert, not any desert, a desert with only salt water, and blossomed like a rose. If you can do it with these sacred teachings, you can certainly encourage us to do it as well, and not call us Mark Hoffmans.
Well, I will say this: I've never done that. I suspect there's some that do, and I apologize for that. That's not kind. It's contentious. It's not what the prophets have taught. It's not what the peacemaker would have any of us do.
That's right.
So all I can say is I applaud your testimony. I applaud your goodness and what you want to make sure the message, the quest you're on. I have some eyes that I've got to put some eyes, my temple glasses on for temple work. I got to put my spiritual eyes on to hear what will come to be and what's being fulfilled. We go about our daily soccer games and movies and eating out, and we don't really stop to really think there is incredible things happening, and it's hastening, and who knows? God knows, our Father in heaven knows, his Son certainly knows what all of your story, I say your, meaning the very remnants we're taught about, what's going to take place, the unfolding of his keeping of those promises. And I think we have some pretty exciting things that are going to happen right before our eyes. I hope it's going to be fulfilling to you. I really do, David. I hope that you will realize, and I don't think you should change your spirit of when you have conversation with the people you need to have conversation with. But I will say this: the Lord will unfold it, and I think he'll let you see through your eyes, this is things happening. And I got to not tone down, but I've got to bring it in and then listen and say, okay, this is, I will be your tool in your hands, Father. I want to help this be done the right way. And as much as you say what's true and what you hold in your heart and what's history and what's prophesied, all I can do is say, go for it and be happy as you see the blessings flow. I don't know, because I'm just a guy from Bountiful, but I have some feelings about it. And I'm just going to tell you, I've heard nothing I've heard nothing that offends me. You know, I've had a couple thoughts that said, but because I heard it first and I didn't hear until a third video later that you said, unless you are a bishop who has the house of Israel, I mean, you're a judge in Israel, set apart, ordained for that, we can't be judging. I heard you say that we couldn't be judging and all that, and I thought, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to judge that. I've got to wait and get some more and see what he meant.
Yep,
and then
right.
I saw you slip that in. That made my heart rest, because all through the scriptures, the Book of Mormon, your history, I know that there's judge. Alma was a judge. He was Mozart was a judge and a political leader, a king. And so there's got to be someone to kind of help us so we can have
It's a gift.
but we can't be judging ourselves. And
It's a gift. Listen, imagine if we had the responsibility, and no one knows unless they've been a bishop.
Yeah.
Hey, be grateful you don't have the responsibility to deal with everyone's drama, and stop trying to deal with everyone's drama if you don't have that responsibility.
There you go.
Be like that mother who stands by her convicted killer son. Like my grandmother stood by my father, who was a young man and made a mistake at 19. He gets out this next end of September. You know, there's a lot of things happening in my life. He's a loving father, and he is because his mother loved him unconditionally, no matter where he placed himself as a child, and is not a 19-year-old, a child. I would say my 30-year-old self is a child.
I understand.
Okay?
That's what we need to be, David. We need to have that heart.
And because of that, my two boys, they know the heart of their grandfather, because he got the heart of his mother. Each of you are carrying the heart of your mother too.
Yeah.
You know, we say the feather. Hold on. Oh, this is awesome. For those that are believing blogs on the internet, they're nonsense. Okay.
I love it.
You know, oh, he's a fake Indian. I'm just like my father, who's a registered Indian. What are you talking about? I fly all over the place with the largest eagle feather that exists. You can't even hide this thing. It's a federal offense for you to have it and not me, because it's a sacred item that tells a teaching. But in actuality, the teaching was for you two. These things are symbolic. And they're symbolic for us to remember. The way I want to teach you something sacred that helps us remember what you just talked about. You know, why do we have feathers? We're not crazy people that like to just run around like chickens. No, this is a teaching that the eagle is the before we had jet airplanes, we didn't know what it looked like above the clouds. The Creator made the great eagle and gifted him to see that with his eyes as a symbolic to say, if the sun is symbolic of me, you should be like that eagle and try to be as high as you can next to me at all times. Don't sit on top of the tree, and certainly don't walk on the ground, metaphorically.
Metaphorically.
The thin side is the feminine, the female, and it represents the direction. It sets the direction that the bird's going to fly. Okay? The direction is the heart of the mother. That's your heart. It's in your chest as a father. Okay? The thick side is lift or descent. That's the action, the responsibility to execute. You would call that the priesthood. It is your responsibility to execute for the strength of the mother. The strength of the mother are the generations she can produce. It's your job to sustain them, to use your strength and endurance to ensure that they can have life. But the man thinks with the mind. What can I do with my strength to support this? And then they fall astray. Okay, and between them is the 7 teachings. To remember the 7 laws given to Noah and to Adam before him, the ways to live the good way on this earth. Bare minimum. This is the bare minimum. There's going to be more above it. You cannot violate this. Okay, you know. But what happens when that provider with the strength, the action, decides to do a descent? What's a descent? When you go to war with your generations unborn, when they have a right to fresh water and clean air, when they have a right to a family, and they have a right to experience this earth, and you choose to take credit that you can never repay right now, and to take everything for you right now, to live as a king right now, are you not at war with the descendants, with the strength of the mother, as you stand by her and say you support her? No, you don't. So we have to remember that what the priesthood is really saying. Now, when you stood in the temple and you stare in that mirror and you see all those generations, that is your responsibility. That is your accountability to ensure that occurs. And the only way that occurs is when you can stand by your unborn generations with the same heart as that woman who's next to you, who does not need the priesthood to remember them. But you do. And so use it in a good way. Now we use the drum and beat the drum. The stick is the masculine and the drum is the feminine. And it's to remind you of your first memory. That's why all the Indians come together. Ooh, they come together. Without the drum, the stick is just a stick. What, it does nothing. A man is nothing without his children and his generations. And he cannot have those without protecting the sanctity of the mother and the woman. And yet we live in a culture that is even trying to take that away.
Yes, indeed.
I can speak on these things because I have a brother who is now telling me that he's my sister. A mother is formed in the womb of her mother. It's a sacred creation placed within her to merge flesh with spirit. And it is your job to defend that. First and foremost, you are the protector of those unborn. And that's why I speak as I am to you. You know, and I'm thankful I can speak, considering I lost my tongue at 5.5. I will swing my sharp sword everywhere.
No, it's been wonderful. I will say this. I had a motive, and my objective was to share that there is so much that's right before our eyes that testifies of what we believe, but we ourselves kind of get ourselves in trouble, and we get narrow thinking, we get judgmental, we're contentious, we criticize because we want to somehow lift ourselves up because we're maybe insecure with our own testimonies, instead of just saying, I can handle it, I've got confidence, but I got to be compassionate, I want to be curious. That if we're just closed-minded, we miss out on so much. There's so much that that I've got 6-10 pages here from the video's notes, and I could have had more. I'm glad I got this recording.
Hey,
David, it's enjoyable. It makes my mind go to thinking.
Yeah, we got. How's the comforter going to do his job if you're the one throwing up the roadblocks, preventing him from being able to reach someone's heart?
That's right.
Do you convert anybody? Nobody converts anybody, and if you do try to convert somebody with force, they always fall away. It's only the conviction in their own heart, because something you said started a conversation in their own mind and heart with the Creator, who's connected to them also equally with you, no matter what knowledge you have.
100%.
When someone has amnesia, their family still knows who they are, regardless if they know they're a part of that family.
Sure.
So just live what you believe every day. I say do your part. PART. This is simple. Pray. Act in faith that your prayer was heard. Act. Rely on the Spirit to do what you're not capable of doing, and we're not capable of doing a lot, so be kind, right?
Right.
And then trust in the Lord that he keeps his promises and everything's for your good. Pray, act, rely, and trust. If you could just do that, okay? Just do that. And then do the one thing that I heard in 4 years that seemed to be repeated so much. Read your Book of Mormon. Listen, read your Book of Mormon. If you don't read your Book of Mormon, you're not going to read the Bible. And if you don't read the Bible, you're not going to seek out the Torah. Okay? All these things go together.
Well, you said Book of Mormon. I'm not going to read it, but I got to quote the verses and let the viewers go and look it up. I think you'll be appreciative of me mentioning this. And that is, first one is 3rd Nephi, chapter 21, verses 12 through 28. It talks about the remnant of Jacob, all about the remnant. Wonderful scriptures and what's the promises and what hopefully the Gentiles will do to help sustain and strengthen this remnant. There's an obligation there. Then there's the one that's, if I can find it, it's 1st Nephi. Yeah, 1st Nephi 15, verses 12 through 19. And it's about the branch. And it's about Lehi's dream and what was the one in planting that branch and what is going to happen in these last days. We're seeing it right before our eyes, David, and this is not happenstance that somehow certain things opened up, certain doors have been opening, windows have been open for you and your people, and the stories that you've had. Well, something stirred in you, and I'm not going to criticize. I have no criticism, but something has stirred in you to where you've taken some heat, I suspect, in the last month or two, and I don't know. I just want to encourage you. I want you to feel and stand strong that there's supporters. I'm open-minded to have and watch and see what will transpire. You'll be in my prayers. I hope the best for you. I will say this, that it's a selfish thing for me to want to say, I wish and hope, I know your focus is there and on this and not so much the Church of Jesus Christ active responsibility type thing. But I think the day will come, and I think you will embrace it fully because you don't want to give your identity away at all. It's part of your identity. But I think when you combine it all, you'll be so fulfilled that you found your way back home, and then will be fulfilled because you found your way, and will be fulfilled because we have more reason to love and to do more than just our little world. So I'm anxious to see what's going to take place. My glasses are gone.
Yeah. Hey, listen, sunrise to sunset. I just do the best I can, and I hope. Hey, we all hope we can get where we're going.
Yes.
And but again, it's going to be those to realize that it's suits and ties aren't what makes you special. It's right there in your heart and in your family.
That's right. I just wear t-shirts, but yeah.
And what I'm wearing is to honor my ancestors, and I certainly know that it's beautiful. And just like I know that when I look at a field and that diversity of that field, I think it's beautiful too. Just like we're all beautiful in our expressions of what the Creator's doing in our life. And yeah, I'm really glad we talked. And I just hope when we do our Exodus and you see a modern day Moses thing going on with our people, that you don't let them condemn us, and you don't let them bring war upon us, that you understand that we're just trying to go home. We're trying to go home. We're trying to protect our grandchildren that are yet unborn, that they don't forget the special things about us. And we don't have to fully take upon ourselves the name of an Italian explorer named Americus Vespucci. We've never benefited from that, okay?
Yeah.
We don't have to take upon ourselves the name of Canada. Okay, we can take upon the name that was given to us. And Ojibwe means I'm recording a vision with the Creator who made me.
I think it's a beautiful.
And I feel like I should be able to do that as well. And the reason we don't like to wear ties is because of the 38 Dakota who were hung in Minnesota. And so to honor them, we don't put anything around our neck. Okay. And so when I was a ward mission leader, I was a great ward mission leader because I had both together, and I could talk a little bit. I was amazing. I'd go to someone, I don't care. We'll go talk, let's talk. And when you believe something is true and you actually act it, people hear it. But I get in so much trouble and get talked to so much because I didn't want to wear a tie. Think about the reasons that you choose to cause division with people. Do you care more about the action, or do you care about the black and white? And I remember, it's really easy to shift really quickly to the other side. And don't forget those that came in from the islands who the great peacemaker also met with and said, he said, sacrifice your heart, give your heart fully and completely, immediately. So just lay down on the altar and I'm going to tear it out of your chest. It's the letter of the law. It's right there. No, come on now. Slow down. Calm down. Love each other.
I think that's right. Before I close this off, is there any last thing? Because this is important. I think there'll be a few thousand folks that listen. It's not every day you can sit at your TV and talk to, or your computer and talk to 4, 5, 6,000 people or 10 or whatever. So is there anything you would like to say? I'll just hush and then I'll close it out. Any last thing, not to me, but who the viewers?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, when I come in a week and I come to Utah and I go to Spanish Fork and I go to the Maple Mountain High School, and just in that journey, when I come there, I'm a running Ute. I went to the University of Utah. I fell in love with the mountains. I'd go climb above the hill, above the clouds. That just welcome me as a brother in Christ. Welcome me as a brother in the great peacemaker who's trying to make peace with yourself, with you. And don't gawk over me or lift me up on any pedestal. I'm the same, or hey, throw stones at me either. I'm an Anishinaabe. It's a sound. It was given to me the Creator made that sound just as much as English. I'm a spirit that's lowered. So are you. You're Anishinaabe too. You're in my tribe. I'm Ojibwe. I'm a spirit in a body. You're Ojibwe. You're a spirit in a body too. I'm in your tribe. And I'm Ojibwe. I'm trying to be Ojibwe. I'm trying to live not with the mistakes I've made, Heck, I'll make another one tomorrow. Okay. It's that I keep trying to get to the higher mountain. Okay. I'm trying to record a good path with the creator, knowing I'm imperfect being. And most of the time, instead of taking the gentle slope down through the valley and the gentle slope up the hill, I'm like you, I'm going to free fall off the cliff. Okay. And then I'm probably going to wander into the dark forest and get lost. And then I'm finally going to find the hill, and it's going to be the steepest climb you could ever imagine. So please just encourage me along the way, because I'm willfully choosing to participate in it when I could just say no. So just do your best to do your part and just be kind. Kindness is the power in peace. My name means he's kind. I'm not always kind, but I'm glad that when people say my name, I remember to be. And so I'll try to be kind to you, and you be kind to me. I'm going to bring a scroll, treat it sacred. You know, it's got a message. I'm going to share a song and a teaching that's taught in our lodge. And you'll understand that it's taught in yours as well. We have drops of water we share in common. And remember, one drop of water to the guy in the desert, and maybe I'm in the desert. And maybe all I have is a single drop of water. Well, because I'm in the desert, that drop of water is what brought me to you. That drop of water was more meaningful in that journey than the big lake that you got of fresh water. So be kind. Be kind. That's what I'd say.
Fantastic, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been Delight. All right, friends. I told you, if this is your first time watching one of my videos and this special guest, you couldn't have picked a better video to start with than to be able to be and listen to David. And I hope.
Can I sing a song?
Yes, sure. Absolutely.
Before you go, I'll let you finish, and then I'll close with the song just so I can show you. This is a prayer song, and you'll hear
Very good.
something in it that should
Love to
tell
hear
you
it.
who it is that we came from.
That'll be nice to close that way. So anyhow, I'm glad you have this opportunity. If you liked what you saw and thought maybe this is interesting to check this channel out, I go and click the like and subscribe. That'd be wonderful. Share it with friends. You can forward it to friends, because I think everything that David had to say is worth sharing and stir some thoughts and to be prayerful. And so I encourage you to do that. Anyhow, until next time, I wish you all continued success. And I'm going to turn it over to David to close us out by singing a song, and then we'll see you later. Love you. Go ahead, David. Thanks.
Okay, so the prayer song is how you live your each day as a breath as a gift. We're in a great creation from the Creator, so what comes to you, accept. It's for your good, and we call the Creator to come in. And so it's Aya gichida we bushkegin. Aya gichida we bushkegin. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah. Aya gichida we bushkegin. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yah. Share a lot in common.
Thank you. All right, everybody. See you a little later.